Hello everybody, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis. I'm starting another series today. It's sort of a branch off of my Horus Heresies series. In the past I've been talking about events that happened then, 30k, the Horus Heresy, and perhaps the smudge aftermath after. What I'm going to do now, at least until I can refresh my memory and learn some new stuff to pass on to you guys, is I'm going to look at some of the more modern stories of 40k. So, early 40k right up to now, the newest stuff that gets published. And I'm going to start with an Imperial Guard legend. This guy's long dead, as most legends are, and his name is Lord Solar Macharius, famous for the McCarran Crusade. This was a 7-year war, which by Guard standards is microscopically short. And yet, it was the most successful crusade since pretty much the Great Crusade itself. I'm told here, because there's a whole page dedicated to him in the Imperial Guard Codex, which will not be the Imperial Guard Codex for much longer. I might do another video talking about that, because there are big changes coming for the Imperial Guard, probably. And Solar Macharius was a war master, one of the greatest war masters since Horus, it is said. And in his 7-year McCarran Crusade, he conquered no less than 1,000 worlds. 1,000 in 7 years. I'm not going to do the calculation, but it's about 3 worlds a year that he was conquering. That's unbelievably... No, scratch that. 3 worlds a week, actually. Yeah, 300 weeks. Yeah, about 3 worlds a week. That's unbelievable. So, you could just imagine how influential this guy was. There were... how many? Dozens of battle groups, not just regiments, but whole battle groups containing several regiments under his command, each with a hand-picked leader. Macharius was on top of everything. He could see everything tactically, and he was just a mastermind, genius. And many were called crazy for what he thought he could do. Everyone who thought they could do it was told they were nuts. And yet Macharius did it. And brilliant, callous. He wasn't afraid to throw lives. Well, he was afraid of throwing his lives away, but he wasn't afraid to destroy things. For example, in here, he would bombard a world until it surrendered. He wouldn't put boots on the ground. He'd just throw all the bombardments at it until they surrendered. He would issue exterminatus if needs be. At least I think he could. Or he would exterminate entire worlds if they put up too much of a fight. And yet he cared so, not like most commanders, he would care so much about his own men. At the end of the first, there is a series of books now about Lord Solar Macharius and the McCarran Crusade, told from the perspective of one of his honour guard. And at the end of it is a epilogue, as most books have these days. And this bit is taken from an Inquisitor's perspective. He keeps a log in this book, and the last part is at the end of the battle for Karsk, which was one of the worlds early on in the Crusade. And at the end of it, Macharius is stood in a manufactorum, so to speak, a factory, and on the production line are the bodies of the guardsmen. All the guardsmen who died that could be recovered were on this production line. And Macharius was just looking out over them, as if he was remembering them all, locking who they were, who they served with, maybe even how they died into his memory, so as he could avenge them. Eventually he obviously hit the start button, and once he'd done all his reflectiveness, and the bodies were destroyed to prevent defacement or rotting or whatever else. But it just shows that as much as he was callous to his opponents, he would throw stuff at them until they went down. He wouldn't throw man at them. He cared about his men. It was said he could remember an officer's name on one meeting. He could, for example, his honour guard were part of a Baneblade crew before they served under Macharius, and they were the first into the main hive of Karsk, and they wreaked havoc. And they were anointed as part, or recognised as part of the sort of aftermath as being excellent for getting the first in. And Macharius met them, and he could remember their officer's name after one meeting. He knew the tank commander who had died, and he knew his replacement, known, I think, in this book as the boy most of the time. I think we do get his name later. But it shows how much of a not caring, guardsmen generals aren't caring, but it shows how much he was different. He wasn't a typical guard commander. And it's, yes, in this book he has the ultimate plot armor. He goes head to head with, I believe, a demon prince. It could be a greater demon with nothing but a bolt pistol and chainsword, I believe it was. And he didn't die, so something slightly off. But it shows that he's a powerful warrior. Yes, he was written into the plot. He couldn't die at this point. This was the beginning of the McCarran Crusade. It's being made up. And this crusade lasted, as I said, for 7 years. 1,000 or more worlds were brought back into the Imperial fold. And Macharius could have kept going forever until he died. He could have kept going. He could have just kept going. Taking, I want that system, that system, that system, that system. And there was no greater success than that. That was his vision. And he couldn't do it. He could not do it. Well, he could do it, but his armies couldn't. They were on the point of exhaustion. They could not keep going. The 7 whole army groups, it wasn't 12, I was wrong from earlier in the video, it is 7. And these whole armies were just shattered. They could not carry on. They were, well, not dead on their feet, but they were really struggling. They were exhausted. They were out of it, basically. And many of them were very superstitious. They whispered about the halo stars which they were coming towards, saying they were haunted, and they're like, oh, I'm not going near that. I don't want to get my soul destroyed, or whatever it was that so scared them. But Macharius was looking at those distant stars, and it said that he was crying in anger. I know people say you cry when you're sad, but these were angry. He was so angry and upset that he could not get those distant stars, those systems, and bring them back to the Imperial fold. Reluctantly, he agreed. Alright, I'm done. I'm coming back to the Imperium. I will re-establish, and maybe I'll go again later. Sadly, that did not come to materialise. I'm sure it will be detailed in the 3rd book in the series. The last one in the series is called Fall of Macharius. The 2nd one is called Fist of Demetrius, which is supposedly a Primarch weapon wielded by Rus. That's against Dark Eldar. I've been hoping to buy that book for ages. I just now seem to have found it in the shelves. Anyway, he agrees to return to the Imperium. So he's on his way home. The armies are retreating. Well, not retreating. They're garrisoned and they're on their way back with what's left. And he died. He died on the voyage back to his home world, name of which we don't know at this point what his home world is called. But his death is still unknown. Nobody really knows how he died. Maybe he was assassinated. Maybe he'd been poisoned. Or maybe it was just an old war wound came back to bite him. Maybe he was just old and tired and gave up. Nobody really knows what happened to Macharius, and that's odd. Anyway, he died, as I just said, and he became a saint. Well, not a living saint is what the Sisters of Battle might have, but he became a saint, Saint Macharius almost. He was immortalised as one of the greatest heroes of the Imperium in human terms. His body is interred in a massive tomb on his homeworld, which they actually renamed Macharia just because of him. It is said that at his funeral march, over 1 million men filed past his tomb, as in when a great hero, perhaps of humanity now, would die, sometimes they have the body lying in state and people can walk past and pay their respects. In Macharius' case, 1 million people did that. Just soldiers, never mind civilians. Over 100 officers laid their swords upon his coffin, which was marble. He had a marble coffin. That must have been really heavy. But over 100 officers from privileged backgrounds would lay their family heirloom swords upon his grave and leave them there as a mark of respect. That's how respected Macharius was. Foremost amongst these swords are the 6 blades that the Lord Solar gifted to his army group generals at the outset. So he gave out 6 precious relics, and they were all returned to him, sort of. His Emperor-class battleship, the greatest ships out there are Emperor-class, Lord of Light. It was his 2nd flagship. I think the first one got destroyed. It was decommissioned and now stands sentinel and orbits it as a tribute. Orbits Macharius as a tribute to Macharius. And yet, everything Macharius worked for sort of came to naught. The generals who had been in charge of overseeing the campaigns under the watchful eye of Macharius got greedy, got jealous, got bitter, and they had their own mini wars. They basically tried to settle it amongst themselves. This became known as the McCarran Heresy, which is a bit of a dishonour because it's nothing to do with Macarius, and I feel that's a little bit harsh on him to call it the McCarran Heresy as though it was his fault. We call it the Horus Heresy because it was Horus, but not the McCarran Heresy because it was Macarius. Macarius was dead, for crying out loud. And the armies all got fighting over what was what, and it got all a bit petty. But the majority were repacified, brought back into line, although it did take 100 Space Marine chapters nearly. Well, not 100 entire Space Marine chapters, but elements of 100 Space Marine chapters. The Dark Angels among them, I'm sure the Blood Angels, the Wolves, all the big names will have been amongst that list. Some of them, though, didn't actually do that well. Some did manage to separate, maybe fell to chaos, I'm not sure. The Heresy lasted for 70 years. It took 70 years for the Imperium to repacify everything. That took 10 times longer than it took Macarius to conquer the worlds in the first place. It shows obviously how well defended these worlds were and how well drilled the soldiers were, as much as anything else, as well as the speed that Macarius had done it. He went through, I'm not going to use a minor Cyrus, but he just crashed through 1,000 worlds, gone, thank you very much. And even though a millennia has passed, this was the beginning of the 41st millennium. We're now coming to the end of the 41st millennium where the plot has kind of stalled. I wish they'd advanced it a little bit, but I'm just being hopeful. That's what all hobbyists are. And everything he knows, or knew, past tense, are still taught, is still honoured. Everything he's said and done is still respected and revered. And that is the story of Lord Solar Macharius. A very brief story of Lord Solar Macharius. I may flesh them out if I can get hold of the other two books. I may talk a bit more about Karsk, the Fisk of Demetrius, and possibly more about the death of, or the fall of Macarius. Maybe not his death, I don't know if it's covered. But, well, actually, I'm done. That's all for today. I have an announcement though. I'm hoping you're still here at the end of this video. I've been posting videos very, very rapidly. It's been around one a day, maybe one every 2 days, and it's unsustainable. So I'm going to slow my upload rate down a bit. As I've just said, currently I'm at about one a day, one every 2 days. It's probably going to drop to twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, depending, probably about one every 3 days, so as I can do proper research, plan everything out and get things ready so that you guys can get the best out of the videos you watch here on Tactica Imperialis. After all, I do want this to be as much of a positive experience for you guys as it's turning out to be for me. So that's that. So this video will be up on Saturday. Sunday I will have the final part of Dark Eldar Codex Analysis, the heavy support, and at that point my slowed down timetable will take effect. After that I will probably talk about, depending, I'm not sure what I'm going to do in terms of story time, as I'm possibly going to call this series, but I'll start Dark Angels Codex Analysis, and I will probably take a look at something tactically as well. I have a battle report coming and an army showcase. I did an army showcase as my second ever video, and I'm finally going to get around to doing another one. So, sorry it's taken so long. I should have a battle report in the next couple of weeks as well. So, thank you for sticking with me to the end of this video. Be sure to leave a like, favourite, subscribe, comment, everything you guys normally do. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching again. My name is Michael, and I will see you all again, folks.